Hi, Dee. Hi, Joe Glover. Whisper. Look at our friend back here. We have Glenn. Wait, right there. Can't really see him too well, but Glenn's there. Hi, Mary. Whisper. Laura Lynn. Linda Gelb. Larky, we got the pre-MRB family here. Just let me know if you see Carolyn go live. I think it'll be a little while yet. Hey, Captain Lee. I messaged her to let her know I was going live. Hi, Susie B. I'm going to read more from Haunted Highways. It's a pretty good book. Take my usual Alka-Seltzer. Hi, Janae. Hey, Detective Turtle Gum. I saw you were live. I saw you're live. I always get your notifications. Short and sweet. Crazy out there on those YouTube streets, huh? They making such. Did I say hi to Dandy? I know you're the first one. I think I did. They making such a big deal about Granny's watching, showing herself. Doll scared you. She's a pretty woman. I mean, they're trying to tear her apart, as usual. She is pretty. I like her eyes, Captain Lee. She has real pretty colored eyes, like a hazel color, I think they call it. Hi, Denise Cormier. That is the seed of Chucky, for real. That is Glenn. Hi, Margot. We get started, okay, guys? Haunted Highways. There's a few more of these that I want to order. Okay, we read 3 last night. We read the first 3 chapters, The Phantom Hitchhiker, Resurrection Mary, and The Weeping Woman. I had Lexi put them there for me to read. So you guys have something to look at. You can see them pretty good now, can't you? All of a sudden. I'm going to move over here more. Yeah, it keeps getting dark. I don't know why. Hi, Tracy B. Hi, Muppets. Okay, so now we're on chapter 4 called The Prophecy. This is still in the Phantom Hitchhiker part, part 1, Vanishing Hitchhikers. And they're all in different parts of the U.S. So you may recognize some of these places. I already have recognized some. Dave turned his TV down. I don't know if it's down enough, but... Thank you, Detective Turtle Gum. That's very sweet. Thank you. You're a nice turtle. Hey, Carol Clark. Okay, this one is called The Prophecy. You're out with friends, minding your own business, when a stranger intrudes. What do you do if that unwanted guest begins to predict the future, especially if ignoring the prophecy could result in your death? And if that spectral visitor is from the church? Three young men had to face these questions and more when they picked up the wrong hitchhiker in the shadow of a volcano. Yeah. Okay. What's black and white and black and white and black and white all over? I don't know, Christopher. What? Anybody remember that joke? Hey, Earthbound. I remember it. A nun rolling down a hill. Wait, I got one, Francis chimed in. What do you call a nun that walks in her sleep? A Roman Catholic. Now that's just stupid. And yours wasn't? Come on, guys, broke in Anthony. Enough with the nun jokes, or we're all going to go to, well, you know where. Yep, newspaper. I remember that too. Earthbound, I don't know if I said hi. Where? Mother Superior's office? Again? Oh, no, not the ruler. No, Anthony warned, pointing a finger straight down. Someplace a little lower. The three students knew they were alone in the car, but maybe God was listening. Better to be safe than sorry. They cut out the jokes. Hi, Nana May. As they drove silently on I-5 from Eugene, Oregon to Tacoma, Washington, the huge mountain loomed off to their right in the distance. Although they had always lived beside the volcano, the boys had never given it much thought. There hadn't been a major rumble from Mount St. Helens since they were born. I wonder if Tammy knows where this is, if she's ever been there. Tammy McD, because she lives in Washington. Hi, Elizabeth T. I'm just going to stop looking at the chat and keep reading for those that are listening on the replay, because I know some people do, and I just want them to be able to listen and enjoy. The boys had studied the volcano in school. People were living on its slopes, located in the Cascade Mountains range, at least 6,500 years ago. Around 1,500 BC, a major eruption buried anyone and anything in the area under a deep deposit of pumice. For 2 millennia, Native Americans had avoided the volcano, but by the time the Lewis and Clark expedition reached the Pacific in 1805, the Yakima, Upper Chinook, Clitiac, Tidnapan, and Cowlitz tribes had been settling its foothills for about 1,000 years. Although the famous explorers saw the volcano as they floated downstream on the Columbia River, they didn't witness any activity. But Mount St. Helens had erupted only 5 to 10 years earlier. Over the next 60 years, there would be occasional seismic tremors, as well as the so-called Great Eruption of 1842. But now, everyone was safe. It was the early spring of 1980. Although smoke plumes were seen from time to time, in fact, there was one now. The volcano had last exploded in 1854. Excuse me. Burping. Francis, the history buff, knew lots of ancient legends that explain the formation and eruptions at Mount St. Helens. His favorite came from the Clitiac tribe. Their chief god, Taihi Sagali, and his 2 sons, Clickitac or Paho and Y East, came from the far north to settle at the Narrows of the Columbia near the present-day city of the Dalles, Oregon, or the Dalles, Dalles, the Dalles. What was it about the Dalles that attracted settlers, thought Francis. It is also it had also been the end of the land journey of the Oregon Trail. In any case, in the volcano creation myth, the sons began to fight for possession of the land. To separate them, their father shot 2 arrows in opposite directions and told his sons to each follow one and settle where the arrow fell. He built a passage, the bridge of the gods, between them. But that didn't end the family squabbles. Both sons fell in love with a young woman named Louette, and their violent fights over her devastated earth, causing earthquakes, leveling forest, and destroying the sky bridge, which tumbled to the ground to form the Cascades. Finally, to put an end to the destruction, Sagali turned all 3 of the others into stone. His son, Klickitat, became what today is called Mount Adams. To the south, his brother, Wyest, became Mount Hood, and beautiful Louette was transformed into Mount St. Helens, which was called Luwaklo, or Smoking Fire Mountain, by the Klickitat. The guys checked out the peak of the mountain, a little smoke trail today, but nothing to be worried about. Besides, there were scientists up there now, apparently checking it out. Wouldn't they tell people if it were going to blow? Holy Mother of Jesus, speak of the devil. Christopher motioned up ahead. About 50 yards down the highway, standing alone on the shoulder of the road, was a woman. She looked to be about 50 or 60 years old. She was in a black dress, a white collar, and a black and white wimple. The look was unmistakable. She was a nun. Hello, John. As they watched, the sister smiled gently, and then at the last second, almost comically, stuck a curved thumb up into the air. She was hitchhiking. A hitchhiking nun. Now they'd seen everything. Well, do you think we should pick her up? You have to, dude. She's a nun. Isn't there some kind of rule that we have to stop to help her out? Do you really think she's a nun? Do you think we can risk it if she's not? What if we leave her standing there and then, I don't know, someone finds out? I told you we shouldn't have been telling those jokes. All right, everybody, take a breath, Christopher warned as he slowed the car. Best behavior. We're going in. A slight pause, and then all 3 burst out laughing. A Star Wars quote? Nice touch, Chris. How about this? How about this one? I have a very bad feeling about this. Luke, use the Force. They were still chuckling as the car came to a halt. Polite to a fault, all 3 boys stepped out of the car. Francis spoke up first. May we offer you a ride, sister? We're only going a few miles up the road, just to Tacoma. When she spoke, they were surprised to hear such a soft voice, not stern like their teachers at school. Tacoma would be fine, thank you. Francis, realizing that he had been riding shotgun, opened the front passenger door for the sister. Once she was inside, he closed the door carefully and hopped in the back with Anthony. Where are you boys heading? To Bellarmine Preparatory? Bellarmine, the 3 guys thought. Although that didn't happen to be where they were headed, they knew the school well. Bellarmine, in Tacoma, was one of the leading Catholic prep schools in the whole area. How can she know just by looking at them that they were Catholic? Were nuns psychic too? The sisters couldn't help but notice the quizzical expressions on their faces. With a twinkle in her eye, she explained, Forgive me if I'm wrong, and I doubt if I am, but I knew you must be Catholic. You were so well-mannered when you stopped to assist me that I just assumed you'd been raised in Catholic schools. Her voice was smooth, liquid, calming. Why couldn't she be teaching one of their classes? That voice made you want to listen to her all day. Before long, she was sharing her story, what had brought her to that spot on the road where they had first spied her. She was on a mission, she said, a sort of assignment she had been instructed, she didn't say by whom, to perform. She was to meet strangers, people in need of help. But then her tone darkened. Yes, she said, it was like the story in the Old Testament of the young men who appeared at Lot's gate. If her message was well received, goodness would come to the people who heard her words. But if she was met with disbelief or hostility, the offenders would surely suffer the wrath of the Lord. The boys squirmed in their car seats. This was not what they wanted to hear. They were just out having fun. But they couldn't ask a nun to hold off on the preaching, could they? Was this a test? Was God watching them? Anthony involuntarily looked up. Get a drink really quick. Hey, Kim. Her voice, once like honey, now was becoming stern and menacing, but they couldn't resist hanging on her words. As Jesus said in the book of St. Matthew, if anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet when you leave that home or town. I tell you the truth, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. Now the guys were freaked. What was she trying to tell them? They stared into her face, but it was no longer gentle and loving. It had become transfixed, severe. The voice had become enraptured, messianic, and her whole manner had become detached, as if she were possessed. Suddenly it occurred to the boys she was no longer directly addressing them. She was delivering prophecy. The nun turned her unfathomable face toward the side window. She stared up at the dome of Mount St. Helens. For I tell you this, the time approaches. Those who do not seek forgiveness for their transgressions and do not change the errors of their ways, they will be consumed by fire and ash. The clouds departed, and as the last rays of sun burst upon the side of the towering mountain, it became crystal clear. She was telling them that the volcano was going to erupt, and soon. If they weren't penitent and didn't seek absolution, were those the right words? They would die in the explosion. Then the most incredible thing the boys had ever experienced, and indeed ever would experience, happened. The nun began to glow, and then, with a small pop, vanished. Startled, Christopher involuntarily slammed on the brakes and veered onto the side of the road. Had that really just happened? Where was she? How could she have just disappeared? But clearly, the miracle had taken place. The front passenger seat screamed its emptiness. Struck dumb, the young men continued on to Tacoma without saying a word. The boys never told anyone about their ethereal visitor. If they had, who would have believed them? Besides, they had enough demerits at school. They certainly weren't going to start telling stories about a doomsday nun. Everyone would dismiss it as a tasteless prank, or worse, a drug-induced hallucination. If the boys had checked in with the Tacoma police, however, they would have found that they were not alone. Over the past few years, more than 20 reports had come in from individuals, as well as carloads of people that had experienced exactly the same thing. They had all stopped to pick up a middle-aged woman, usually but not always dressed in a nun's habit, who warned the motorists that if they didn't repent their sins, they would die in an accident on the highway. In the last couple of months, she had changed her apocalyptic story to center on Mount St. Helens. As it turned out, the nun was right, at least in part. On May 18th, 1980, after several months of underground murmurs, Mount St. Helens exploded. The north side of the mountain blew out, causing a debris avalanche that stripped away everything in its path. Plumes of pumice and steam followed, covering miles around with a layer of ash. 57 people were killed, and 250 houses were destroyed. Miles of road and railroad were wiped out, as were 47 bridges. By far, it was the deadliest and costliest volcanic eruption in U.S. history. Had the mysterious sister accurately predicted the desolation? Was she describing Mount St. Helens eruption to her captive audiences at all? Or was she really trying to relay a holy vision of the judgment day? In fact, had she even been real, an angel of the Lord? Or had the boys actually seen a ghost? That one gave me goosebumps as well, Ren. Okay, we're at part 2, streetwalkers. You never know whom you might bump into walking down the street. Even a well-traveled hiking trail, an innocent-looking garden path, or a rustic bridge might be home to some restless spirit. In the next few chapters, you'll meet some amazing characters. From Hawaii, the night marcher warriors and the fire goddess Pele make an appearance. From Japan, Awa, the ghost of a murdered bride. And from the American South, abolitionist John Brown and plantation owner William Baynard. For good measure, you'll also find a haunted bridge and a spectral nun that glides along a garden trail. So if you see them as you scroll down the street, walk on by. As you stroll down the street, not scroll. Madame Pele pays a visit. Do spirits of the gods walk among us? And if so, why do they interact with us mere mortals? One such deity, Madame Pele, is kind enough to drop by to warn us before her volcanic outbursts. Other times, her appearances are mere mischief or simply augur misfortunate. But one thing's certain, she's here and she's not going away. The mysterious woman in the flowing red muumuu, accompanied by a small white dog at her side, was being seen again at night along the lonely, deserted roads all over the big island of Hawaii. When would the next eruption begin? It was a question locals had been asking for generations, and the answers always led back to the beginning of time. There was trouble in paradise. Pele, the daughter of Kinhulane, and the goddess Hami, was born in Kahiki. That's Tahiti to you and me. She had a huge family, and all of her brothers and sisters were gods or goddesses over different aspects of the natural world. Pele's specialty was fire, especially in the way it frequently showed itself throughout the Polynesian world. She possessed the power to produce the flames and molten lava of the volcano. But just like in many large human families, there were constant quarrels and bickering among the brothers and sisters. In the case of Pele, the thorn in her side was her sister, Namaka Okahai, who was a goddess of the sea. Now let's be honest, it was probably Pele's fault. Pele had, how should we say this delicately, great womanly needs, and her power to transform into any human form or age greatly helped her in her conquest. By changing herself into a young, sensuous woman, she was able to attract any man she desired. Unfortunately, one of these men, it said, was the husband of her sister, Namaka Okahai. Furious at Pele and jealous of her great beauty, Namaka Okahai would force the waves of the sea over the coastline and up into the foothills whenever Pele settled, snuffing out her flames. Wherever Pele settled, snuffing out her flames. After centuries of torment, Pele decided to leave Kahiki and find a new home in the Great Islands to the northeast. She pleaded her case to her father, and once granted permission to depart, Pele formed a gigantic canoe to cross the oceans. She wasn't going to travel alone, of course. Several of her relatives decided to go with her, as did 40,000 lesser deities. To find their new home, Pele asked her brother, Kamo Alai, who had a shark body, to swim in front of the boat to guide her. Even so, the journey was marked with difficulties. Ever restless, Namaka Okahai tossed wave after wave at the vessel, trying to sink the craft. Eventually, Pele arrived at the chain of islands we call Hawaii, stopping first at the tiny outcrop of Niihau, then onto Kauai, followed by Oahu. At every turn, when Pele tried to create a new home for herself deep in the rock by using her magic digging stick, Namaka Okahai would fill the hole with water, either by having it seep up through the ground or by tossing tidal waves up the coast. The monumental battle between the sisters came to a head on the island of Maui, where Pele settled into the crater Halikala. Fire and water nearly consumed each other in the clash between the titans, and in the end, Pele snuffed out and consumed. To this day, her bones can be seen on the road to Hana in the form of a huge cinder cone called Ka'iwa o Pele. I gotta get a drink. Sorry, guys. Content in her victory, Namaka Okahai returned to Kahiki, but Pele lived on in spirit form. She moved to the big island of Hawaii, where she was finally able to dig a pit deep enough and far enough inland that it was out of her sister's reach. Today, that home is the 13,680-foot volcano known as Mauna Loa. But Pele still roamed the earth looking for consorts. According to tradition, she traveled as a spirit from her home on Hawaii to the island of Kauai, where she happened upon a handsome human chieftain. She made the mistake of answering her youngest sister, Hayakai Aka Hola Opele, to bring the warrior back to her on the big island. But during the trip, Hayaka fell in love with the chief herself. In a fit of jealous rage, Pele killed the chieftain twice, but both times Hayaka brought him back to life. Can we get to some normal names here? Pele's greatest romantic battle was with Kamapua'a, a shape-shifting deity who usually appeared as a pig or, when in human form, with a bristly boar-like back. Pele found herself the object of his unwanted affection. The volcano goddess rejected Kamapua's, but that only seemed to spur him on. Every time he tried to approach Pele, she held him back with her fire. Kampapua would then call on his sister to cover Pele with fog and torrents of rain. The colossal war raged for ages until finally Pele's fires had diminished to the point that they were almost extinguished. Eventually, Pele considered defeat. The gods made love and Pele's flames were restored. As a final insult to Pele, after she bore him a child, Kama Puaz deserted her, leaving her alone in the fiery abyss. This is a hard chapter to read. Today, a ridge road, crater rimmed drive surrounds the great Kalua caldera on the eastern slope of Mauna Loa on Hawaii. For years, drivers along the path have reported seeing a woman, usually young but sometimes elderly, walking on the shoulder of the road. It's Pele in human form, walking the earth. If she's wearing white, the motorist or someone he or she knows is going to fall ill. But if Pele's wearing red, it usually means a volcanic eruption will take place within days. Madame Pele has never sat quietly in her home at the bottom of the 280-foot deep Halama Ma'awu crater in the Kalehu Kalai caldera. I'm sorry. She would frequently become angry if the mortals living on her island didn't worship her or leave her tributes. And in her blazing temper, she would start a flow of lava or shoot sparks and flames high into the air. To this day, locals will try to appease her by laying offerings of chicken or alcohol along the rim of the crater. Also, according to legend, if you remove any piece of lava from the islands, Pele will curse you. Bad luck will follow you until you return the stones to their native shores. All quaint stories? Just ancient myths of gods and goddesses? Maybe. And yet the appearances of Madame Pele's ghost on the Hawaiian Islands occur quite frequently, and the sightings are far too numerous to dismiss as the products of mere imagination. If you're driving anywhere on the island in the middle of the night and you see a young, attractive woman in a red muumuu on the side of the road, it's best that you stop to offer Madame Pele a ride. Don't worry, almost as soon as she steps inside your car, she'll disappear from sight. But if you don't invite her in, you'll undoubtedly anger her, which will result in your own death or set off a new round of volcanic eruptions and devastation to the island. She still gives her forewarnings. Residents of Kopaho, Kapaho swear that in 1960, Madame Pele showed up 2 days before the 2,600-foot wide lava flow from Mauna Loa destroyed their town. In fact, many old tales surround the volcanic eruptions that have affected the Kapaho region. In one of the best known, the local chieftain challenged a young lady to race him by sled down the mountainside. He was halfway down the slope when he looked beside him to discover that the woman was actually Madame Pele, and she was riding a river of lava. And apparently, Pele is still on the prowl for companions. In recent years, the specter of a striking lady in the trademark flaming red muumuu has been seen roaming the halls of the hotel towers in the Hilton Hawaiian Village in Honolulu, Hawaii. Now, some people think she's the phantom of a woman who was murdered in the hotel, but most locals agree that she's most likely the ghostly manifestation of Pele herself. She certainly isn't warning the visitors about volcanoes, though. Is it possible she's looking for a new lover? If you're in Hawaii on vacation, be careful whom you meet in your hotel hallway. It could be Madame Pele paying a visit. Oh, I hope this isn't going to be another hard one right here. The night marchers. Sorry, guys. I guess they don't run. Hi, Amy. Sorry, Denise. You don't want to go to Hawaii? Oh, come on. I want to go. Let's go. Chapter 6, The Night Marchers. The folklore of Hawaii is filled with spirits of spirit orbs, legends of the mysterious Menehune or little people, and tales of ghosts and apparitions. But none is more amazing than that of the night marchers, the parade of spirit warriors that pass over the old trails that crisscross the islands. Just seeing the procession can mean death unless you're lucky enough to have someone or something intervene. Cutting across the grassy plain of the Nunu Valley, Kami knew he was late. Where had the time gone? It was already after sundown, and even though streaks of red still lit the western sky, he had promised his mother he would be home hours before this. Not that he was too young to be out on his own. Heck, he was almost 18. But as his mom had often warned him, you can't be too careful these days. You never know who you'll run into or who will run into you. Kami's mother meant that both figuratively and literally. She meant that both figuratively and literally because these days, drivers seem to be zooming across the island at top speed. If they're unfamiliar with the roads, and this was the height of tourist season, they could very easily drift just a little too much toward the shoulder and hit someone innocently walking down the side of the highway, which is one of the reasons Kami was now taking the hiking trail toward his home. Walking along the cliffs, Kaimi almost always felt most in touch with his native Hawaiian roots, something his grandfather, Maleko, had instilled in him when he was just a little boy. Maleko knew the traditions well. He had still been a young man when businessmen, led by politician Sanford Dole, a cousin of James Dole, the pineapple magnate, overthrew Queen Luluakalani in 1893. The queen, hoping to spare her subjects from bloodshed, asked them to be patient while she petitioned Washington, D.C. for the return of her throne, but many natives revolted against the new government. The rebellion was squashed, but to his dying day, Maleko was proud that he had joined in the struggle. Luluakalani was allowed to leave house arrest in the Iolani Palace in Honolulu in 1896, but there was no turning back for the islands. The monarchy had been dissolved forever. Over the years, as mainland people moved to Hawaii, more and more of the natives abandoned their old ways. But Maleko resisted. As he raised his children, he made sure that he had learned the language and all the ancient legends of his people. Then, as they had children of their own, Maleko insisted that they be taught the native customs as well. Now, Maleko was gone, but Kaimi treasured the memory of the many lessons he had learned at his grandfather's knee. That was one of the reasons he loved to walk in the Nuuanu Pali. Not only could he catch a panoramic view all the way from the top of the mountains down to the windward beaches of Oahu, but he also knew the area was steeped in Hawaiian history. In fact, the bloodiest battle in the fight for Hawaiian unification took place very close to where he was standing. In 1795, Kamehameha I, known as King Kamehameha the Great, and 10,000 of his warriors sailed from the base of the island of Hawaii to conquer first Maui and then Molokai before moving here to Oahu. In the fierce battle of Nunu, Kamehameha drove the chieftain Kalanick and his men across the valley floor where Kaimi had been earlier that day, up into the top of the perilous cliff. At the climax of the monumental clash, hundreds of Kalanu Kapule's warriors were forced over the precipice. In the aftermath, Kamehameha was able to bring all of the Hawaiian islands under his rule. Come on, can we shorten these names a little? Kaimi fell in step with the old Pali highway, the first road over the Nunu Pali connecting the windward towns of Kondohe and Kailua with Honolulu, was constructed in 1845. When the road was upgraded in 1898, more than 800 skulls, no doubt from the warriors who had plummeted to their deaths 100 years earlier, were uncovered. In the 1950s, the old Pali Highway was replaced by a new road with tunnels cut through the mountains. About 3 miles of the old highway still existed, however. Much of the way was now overshadowed by bending trees that bordered its length, and hikers like Kaimi often walked along the paved road, the meandering Nunu Pali Drive nearby, and the hillside trails surrounding them. Of all the tales his grandfather had told Kaimi, he liked the ghost stories best. Maliko had warned him to always be on guard when he walked through this area because Nunu Pali was said to be haunted. What do you mean? Do you see spirits there? Sometimes, Kaimi, sometimes. A man named Morgan Wilder had his home set up there on the old Pali Road. He died back in 1948, killed himself. But it's not his ghost that haunts the highway. It's a little girl who hanged herself on a tree at the hairpin turn known as Morgan's Creek, near where he lived on Nunu Pali Drive. By the time they found the girl a few days later, her head had separated from the body. Her corpse was put back together and buried, but as you go by that withered old tree, you can make out a mysterious black shape among the leaves. Sometimes you can even see her ghost hanging from one of its limbs, and if you're not careful, she might jump out at you. There were other Oahu ghost stories, and Kaimi loved them all. For instance, they say that if you walk alone out in the fields or woodlands at night without a flashlight, you'll be attacked by a phantom woman dressed in white. Most often, she just scares you, but some people claim that if you get too close to her, she'll kill you. Then, if you drive past the cemetery across from the Kahala Mall with your windows open, an invisible spirit will jump into your car with you. Even though you can't see it, you can feel its presence sitting in the back seat, right behind you. Sometimes you can actually make out the phantom. It's the ghost of a little girl. But as you drive away from the cemetery, the spectral presence evaporates. Perhaps the strangest legend claims that you should never carry pork in your car if you're driving over State Route 61, the new Pali Highway. This was true for the original Pali Road when it was the main passageway over the mountains as well. If you do, your car will stall or break down somewhere along the road, usually stranding you in a dark, deserted area until the meat is removed from your car. In one retelling of the story, a taxi driver crossing the Nunu Pali was grabbed from behind by an invisible force as she passed through one of the tunnels. The unseen specter pushed her body and head into the steering wheel, almost causing her to crash, but it let go as soon as the driver exited that tunnel. When she later cleaned out her car, she found a half-eaten pork sandwich left in the car by a passenger. In Kami's favorite version of the tale, if the spirits stop your car on the highway because you're carrying pork, a phantom white dog will appear next to your car. All you have to do to get your car running again is crack your window and drop out the forbidden meat. As soon as the dog has eaten it, the canine will vanish, and at the same moment your car engine will start up. Kami loved to strike out on his own to investigate all of these old ghost stories. According to Hawaiian tradition, his name meant seeker, and he knew that people who have the name are said to be able to uncover secrets and hidden truths. Indeed, Kaimi never took what people said at face value. He had to examine what he was told to make sure for himself before he was able to believe. Yes, Kaimi fit him like a glove. How could his parents have known, when he was only a few days old, that it would be a perfect name for him? Had grandfather Maleko, who knew such things, told them? Now it was dark. There were no houses in sight. And as he left the old Pele highway far behind him, there was little light. It was hard to make out the trail. Kaimi knew he had to be careful. At first, he thought he was imagining it, but then, rising over the whisper of the grass, he could make out the faint sound of men's voices, singing, chanting, steady, soft but intense. They were accompanied by the rhythm of drums and one O Hanu Ahu I O Hanu Hu, the bamboo nose flute, sorry. The voices seemed to be coming from just over the next ridge up ahead. They got stronger. The men must have been getting closer. Let me get another drink really. Dogs can't resist bacon. It is strange, isn't it? Hi, Lori. Craving bacon. Bacon, yeah. As Kaimi reached the top of the hill, let me turn this on. Turn my sound on. Uh-oh. Let me see something. Let me get a piece of gum real quick, guys. These words, hard to pronounce. Let me know if Carolyn goes live. Hey, Davita. Let me message her. I messaged her and I said, come listen while I read. Come relax in your massage chair. I hope everyone's having a nice night and a wonderful day. As Kaimi reached the top of the hill, he saw the flickering, not from flashlights or distant traffic, but from fire. He could make out dozens of separate flames coming from the ends of handheld torches. The shadowy figures carrying them were walking 4 or 6 across, drawing toward him on the earthen path. Kaimi stopped abruptly, puzzled. Who would be out here in the desolate fields in the dark, carrying torches, chanting? And then it struck him. They were night marchers. The night marchers, the high, the Huakai Akapo, as they were known in Hawaiian, were ghosts of venerated warriors, chiefs, or even deities that roamed the earth. Although they could materialize any time, they most often appeared between 7:30 p.m. and dawn on one of the special nights at the end of the month on the Hawaiian calendar that was dedicated to the native gods. As they traveled from ancient battlefields, the marchers collected the souls of dead chieftains and warriors, as well as their descendants, both male and female. As they passed, spirits of the dead who were worthy would join their ranks. Then the entire parade would move on, heading either toward the nearest heiau or temple, one of the outcroppings or beach promontories that acted as a jumping off point to the next world, or some other sacred spot. Kaimi had thought the night marchers were only a myth, like all the other ghost stories, but now, here, one of those myths had come to life and was about to meet him face to face. He tried desperately to remember everything his grandfather had told him about the night marchers. He knew an encounter with them could be deadly. In fact, they usually were. Over the years, police had found the bodies of people lying on the ground, face up, their eyes and mouths wide open, their arms frozen in place in front of them, as if they had died trying to fight off assailants. But there were never any marks on the corpses, no signs of assault. Medical examiners always decided that the victims had died of heart attacks. But native Hawaiians, raised on tales of the fearsome night marchers, knew what had really happened. Ooh, that's creepy. Kaimi's mind raced. What was he supposed to do to survive? That's right. First of all, don't look at any of them in the eye. Don't look any of them in the eye. Don't try to run. You don't want to catch their attention if they hadn't seen you yet. Quickly judge which way they're heading and get out of their way. Then stop and drop to the ground. The warriors seemed to be following the old dirt footpath that had been worn into the hillside long before the old Pele highway was made. Kaimi got off the trail and moved swiftly about 20 feet to one side. If the men didn't spread out too wide, and he was lucky, they might miss him. Kaimi got down. He lay there, panting, terrified, as the phantoms grew closer and closer. He knew that even lying flat on the ground, he wasn't safe. He was supposed to do something else. What was it? He let his mind drift back. Tell me, grandfather, he whispered to himself. Tell me, what am I to do? Then, as if in a dream, he could see himself as a young boy. There he was, 6 years old, sitting by his grandfather, and the old man was talking about the dreaded night marchers. Some of the elders say that when you see them, you're to lie on the ground with your eyes closed, say nothing, and breathe as little as possible until long after the spirits have passed by. Some say that it helps if you take off all of your clothing and lay face upward. But why would I do that, why would I do that, Kupuna Kain? They would see everything. Yes, that is the point, my little Mo Apuna. But that is what may save you. As the warriors and the chiefs, guards pass you by, they will see you there, undressed, and cry, shame, shame on you for being uncovered. They will feel you have dishonored yourself and your ancestors, so they will leave you behind without stopping. There is no guarantee that it will work, but it may make the difference that could save your life. Without a thought, Kaimi ripped off his shirt. Soon he was down to his underwear. Even in the legends, you only had to strip to your loincloth. When he realized that it was too late, they were upon him. He kept his head down. He didn't dare look directly at them. It would mean instant death. But Kaimi couldn't resist taking a peek. He lifted his eyes just as two warriors raised their spears. Strike him! No, stop! He is mine! From behind the guards, a third warrior stepped forward. The boy is my flesh and blood, of my family. You will not harm him. He pushed past the specters that were just about to kill Kaimi, turned toward them, and planted his feet in front of the boy, shielding him. The two guards hesitated for only a moment, then moved back to join the procession. Kaimi sat there. How long? 5 minutes? A half hour? The glimmer of torchlight disappeared as the ranks of the night marchers moved over the next ridge. The sounds of their chanting, the drums, the flutes, faded in the wind. Still, the lone guardian stood over him. Kaimi didn't move. Then he remembered. Only in Amakua, the spirit of some ancestor that marched with the phantom warriors, could protect you once they had turned against you. Who was his savior? The warrior looked down to face the boy, who was now shivering, nearly naked under the moonlit sky. You may open your eyes, my grandson. You learned well. You are safe. Kaimi stared up at the spirit hovering over him. The warrior was young, powerful, handsome. The passage into the other world had changed his appearance, back to a time long before Kaimi had been born. Yet the man was unmistakable. The protector standing before him was his grandfather, Maliko. Of course, Maliko. His grandfather's name was Hawaiian for warlike. His grandfather, who had chosen to take part in the native uprising all those years ago, was descended from warriors. No wonder he was now one of the night marchers. Kaimi was going to live. He had never felt such love for his grandfather. Yes, you are safe now, my foolish, reckless grandson. I could not let them hurt you. One day, if you wish, you may join us, for you too come from a long line of warriors. But for now, my little Kaimi, aloha. And with that, the apparition dissolved. He had gone to join his fellow marchers. Night marchers. Mahalo, grandfather, thought Kaimi. Thank you. Mahalo. Nua lola. You're going to have nightmares. Hi, Big Mama. I don't know what you did, Kevin. You put a link? It's cool though. Thank you. I think it's cool. Very cool. Come on, not no more any more of this Hawaii stuff. I guess I might as well read. Oh, wait a minute. Carolyn's not live yet, I know. So I think we have time. Going to finish with this Hawaii stuff. One more chapter. And then we're going to go where Lisa D is, I believe, on her vacation. They're talking about the place she's at, or close to it. Owa's Ghost, Chapter 7. You're really taking, I know, right, Denise? That is a good job, Kevin. Thank you. She is going either South Carolina or North Carolina. I forget which. I think she told us, though. Hi, Doris. It's going to be close to where she's at, though, the next story after this one. Not her exact spot, obviously, but the general area. A terrifying creature roams the streets of Tokyo at night. Oh, wait. Oiwa. Okinawa. Awa. And it's not Godzilla. It's Owa, the sinister ghost of a betrayed wife who seeks retribution for her mutilation and murder hundreds of years in the past. Beware, or you might become her next victim. She was the most beautiful woman Shigeo had ever seen. Not that he caught a very good look of her, mind you. He noticed her as he was coming out of Shibuya Station, her long black hair framing a delicate face. She paused briefly to look at the statue of Hakio, the loyal. Remember that? Hakio, I don't know how you pronounce it. I know the movie. The loyal dog that had stood by the station faithfully for 7 years, waiting for a dead master who would never come. Remember that movie, guys? With Richard Gere? She continued on. Shigeo, who had come downtown for a few casual hours of idle people watching, suddenly put those ideas on hold. He decided to follow the mysterious stranger. Was this what, in America, they call stalking? As he walked down the district's jammed nighttime streets, he occasionally caught a glimpse of the woman as she slipped in and out among the throngs of shoppers and club-goers. The petite woman seemed to positively glow. Dressed in a long, elegant white kimono, tied at the waist with a wide, faintly colored obi, the enchantress seemed to be dressed for a celebration. Sure, kimonos were still common here on the streets of Tokyo, and Shigeo saw them every day. But among the young, they usually were reserved for special occasions. There she was again. She must have briefly darted down a side street, but now she was on Kon Dori, heading where? She was moving away from all the major hotels. Surely, if she were dressed to attend a private party, she would head to one of the dozens of function rooms in the center gay. Propelled by curiosity alone, quite uncharacteristic for Shigeo, he hastened his step. The crowds had thinned out. She had stopped, standing on her own, separate from any passers-by, and looked neither left nor right. It was almost as if she were waiting. For him? Shigeo came up close behind her. Dare he? He reached out a hand and touched her lightly on the left shoulder. Sumo, Mason? I'm sorry, he said. Please excuse me. Suddenly, the maiden's right arm thrust upward, and she clamped her palm on top of his hand. He stared at her flesh. It was bloodless, almost blue, and ice cold. She spun to face him, and involuntarily, Shigeo let out a shriek. She was no longer the flawless beauty he had seen just minutes before. She had somehow transformed into an old hag, a ghoul with a disfigured, weathered face and red, burning eyes that stared at him maliciously. Her right eye drooped frighteningly, as if all the muscles around it had died and fallen slack. Her hair, which had seemed so lustrous, was now stringy and disheveled, and bald patches clearly showed through. Parting her thin, pasty lips, she revealed rotting, jagged teeth. Were they fangs? Shigeo's eyes dropped to her kimono, and to his horror, he realized the wide garment was bound up the wrong way. The silken cloth was wrapped around her right to left in the form of a burial kimono. Why, that meant the woman standing before him was no longer living. She must be a ghost. Shigeo snatched back his hand. Had touching this demon sealed his doom? The creature smiled wickedly. She seemed to be feeding, growing stronger on his fear. A low, guttural cackle emerged from her throat. She pressed her right hand over her heart, or where her heart would have been if she were alive, then reached out and pointed her long left forefinger at his chest. The gesture was unmistakable. She loved him. Of course. Shigeo suddenly realized why the hellish being was in a formal kimono. The succubus was dressed as a bride. The ghost must have been spurned by her husband, and she was now out for revenge. Was he about to become her victim, or had she chosen him as her new consort? Shigeo stepped back. Odd, she didn't follow. He moved again. Still, she stood anchored to the spot. As he watched, the fire in her eyes dimmed, leaving them blank, soulless. Then her whole body seemed to fade. There was a flicker, and the banshee was gone. A door from one of the clubs burst open, and people began to spill out onto the sidewalk. Had their arrival scared the evil spirit away? Whatever the reason, he was thankful he was no longer alone with the demon. His energy drained and emotions spent, Shigeo breathed a sigh of relief. He would not be Owa's next victim after all. Owa, 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 Oiwa. Ayman, once a respected samurai during the feudal wars, had lost favor with his master and was forced to become one of the Ronin who drifted from lord to lord as their services were required. Of course, according to the Bushido Shoshinshu, or Code of the Samurai, he was supposed to have committed obera seppuku, or, as some more sordidly referred to it, harikiri. But he had chosen not to perform ritual suicide, and the defiant act brought even more shame to him and his family. Yes, family, because Ayman was married. During his courtship of the lovely Alwa, Owa, I can't pronounce it the same way each time. The girl's father had found out about the awful deeds that had led to Ayman's dismissal, and to prevent the old man from exposing his secrets and calling off the wedding, Ayman secretly killed him. Without employment and shunned by his fellow samurai, Ayman was forced to take up a lowly trade, making umbrellas to sustain his wife and baby. Slowly, imperceptibly, he began to resent Ola, blaming her for his poverty and disgrace. He had no cause, of course, but that didn't matter to a man who was slowly starting to go mad. Then, out of the blue, Ayman's new neighbor, who knew nothing about the samurai's past, offered him a way out. He was rich, and if only Ayman would desert Owa and marry his attractive granddaughter, he would support the former warrior to the end of his days. Ayman immediately consented, but he suggested a dark twist. Why not kill Owa to clear the way completely? That way, no dishonor would follow him for leaving Owa behind. A murder scheme was devised. Owa had become sick following the birth of her baby, and she was still quite weak. Ayman concocted a poison, which he gave her as medicine, promising it would restore her health and vitality. Owa, distrusting and naive, took the potion, but to Ayman's dismay, it didn't kill her. Instead, it paralyzed the right side of her body and her face, causing one cheek to sag. Her hair started to fall out in clumps, and her face was so ravaged that it turned the once stunning Owa into a hideous crone. When she finally had the strength to leave her bed to look into a mirror, the shock of seeing the Gorgon she had become, coupled with the dawning awareness that it was her husband who had done this to her, caused her frail heart to stop. Right? No wonder she was mad. Run. But the tragedy had only begun. Kobadi Kolhai, a devoted household servant, discovered what Ayman had done. To stop him from telling anyone, the Ronin accused Kolhai of theft and had the innocent man executed. In a gruesome act of insane desecration, Ayman nailed the bodies of Owa and Kohai to opposite sides of a wooden door and threw it into the furious rapids of a river. Seemingly with no other obstacles to his plan, Ayman married his patron's granddaughter. Alone with his bride after the wedding ceremony, he lifted her veil only to see, how could it be, the face of his dead wife, Owa, glaring at him accusingly. Bedecked for the festivities in his full samurai attire, the terrified warrior drew one of the swords from his waist and in a single slice chopped off Owa's head. Instantly, his mind and eyes cleared, as if he were emerging from a fog. He looked down to the lifeless body. The face staring back at him from the severed head was not the repulsive Owa, but that of his new bride. Shaken, Ayman ran to his neighbor to tell him the dreadful news, but when he entered the house, he found Kohai's ghost waiting for him instead. Ayman lifted his other sword and hacked at the phantom. Only when he heard the heavy thud of a very real corporeal body hitting the floor did he comprehend what he had actually done. He had murdered his neighbor, the father of the woman he had just married, the woman he had just killed. Pursued by Alwa's merciless spirit, Ayman fled into the hills. Owa haunted him day and night without end. Her face appeared on the shades of the lanterns in his room. Billowing smoke changed into strands of her hair. Finally, while fishing in the river, his line snagged the door that still held the corpses of Owa and Kohai. Deranged, Ayman ran from the mountainside screaming. On the path, he was met by Owa's brother, who was coming to avenge her. In the short struggle that ensued, Ayman, exhausted and ready for release from torment, was killed. Some claim Owa was now buried at a temple named Myogi-ji, which is located in Yatsuwa in the Shinjuku district of Tokyo. On the marker, the date of her death is given as February 22nd, 1936. Is this the same Owa? Regardless, according to legend, her spirit has never felt that justice was served. In the many versions of the ancient tale, Owa is an onryo, a ghost that returns to Earth to seek revenge. Her apparition still appears throughout Japan to this day, and her specter is often seen on the busy streets of modern Tokyo. Even people not familiar with her ancient tale of sorrow fall prey. People like unsuspecting Shigeo, And who will be her next target? Could it be you? Could it be you? Could it be you? Hi, Element. Carolyn's not live yet, right, guys? Hard for me to concentrate on it, Ren, because all the names hard to pronounce. I can't follow the story very well. Okay, now we move to South Carolina. Chapter 8, The Funeral Cortege of Baynard Plantation. I believe that's where she was going. Ren. There are stories of phantom stagecoaches and wagons galore, but the sighting of a spectral horse-drawn funeral carriage is a rare sight indeed. For more than 100 years, that's what some local residents of one South Carolina seaside resort have claimed to have seen. And it turns out to be more than just a trip to the grave. It's also a search for a missing cadaver. Welcome back, Nicole. That's where there's Shorty. 3 shorties. Boy, here we go. My son-in-law used to go here a lot. Well, a few times to golf. Today, Hilton Head Island is a dream vacation getaway. Located in South Carolina, along the Georgia border, the Atlantic Ocean retreat is just 20 miles outside of Savannah. With all the multi-million-dollar resorts, 12 miles of snow-white sand, and more than 24 premier golf courses. Hilton Head is a stop on the PGA Tour. It's hard to believe the first bridge onto the island, opening it to automobile traffic, wasn't constructed until 1956. And see, my son-in-law is good enough. He could be in that PGA Tour. He really could. He's so good. I mean, he could be a professional. I don't know about the tour, but he really could be. That's what Dave's always said. And I've told Mark that too, and he said, yeah, if he would have really tried or whatever. I don't know, but he's super good. He's very good. Loves his golf. But the story of the Baynard plantation ghost dates back much further, to a simpler time, when cotton was king and the island found itself trapped in the struggle between Union forces and the Confederacy during the war between the states. Spanish explorers, led by Francisco Gordillo, were the first Europeans to make contact with the natives living on the island in 1521. By the 1600s, the land had become English territory, and in 1663, Charles II granted a wide swath of land in the Americas to 8 men known as the Lord Proprietors. That same year, Captain William Hilton sailed from Barbados on the Adventure and visited the region on their behalf. Off the coast of the Carolinas, he gave his name to this particularly attractive small islet located at the head of Port Royal Sound. No, I don't want any money, Billy boy. That's really sweet, but no, just listen to the story. We're just waiting for Carolyn to go live. When she goes live, of course, let me know, guys, if you get the notification before me. Okay. We are reading where Lisa D is now on vacation. Hilton Head, South Carolina. We're somewhere right around there. In 1776, a sea captain named John Stoney bought 1,000 acres known as Braddock's Point, named for Captain David Cutler Braddock of the half galley ship Beaufort, located at the southern end of the island. Blue hair don't care, right? Thank you, Billy boy. You're so funny. Thank you so much. That's really sweet. Bam. But you don't have to do that. About 17 years later, he began to build a house on the site, and by 1820 it was completed. Today, most of the ruins of the Baynard plantation are from that mansion. The Stony plantation passed by inheritance to a number of heirs until the 1840 Saucy Jack. Stoney lost the property to William Eddings Baynard in an all-night poker game. Baynard was already a successful planter on Edisto Island, about 30 miles up the coast from Hilton Head, and he owned 2 other island plantations as well. He introduced Sea Island cotton, which he brought from Barbados, onto his Braddock Point property. It soon flourished. Bless you, Lex. Billy boy, you're sweet. My nose is itching. What was that my granny always said? If your nose itches, you're going to get company. We haven't heard that one in a long time. But yeah, nose itches, you're going to get company. If your palm itches, you're going to get money. And it was my nose itching, not my palm. Kiss a fool? Really? Company, yeah, Kevin. Or in a fight? Ooh. Okay, let's read more about this. This is getting scary, I think. He introduced Sea Island cotton, which he brought from Barbados, onto his Braddock Point property. It soon flourished. Baynard and his wife Catherine raised 4 children in the great house. In 1849, at the age of 49, Baynard died of yellow fever. He was buried in an antebellum above-ground mausoleum in the cemetery of Zion Chapel of Ease, a tiny wooden Episcopal church that had been built for the plantation owners in 1788. In December 1860, South Carolina was the first state to secede from the United States. By the time the war broke out, more than 20 working plantations were on Hilton Head Island, with the Baynard plantation being one of the finest. Fortifications were built on the island in July 1861 to protect the area from Union forces. But that November, Northern troops gained control over the region after winning the Battle of Port Royal. I hope not, because they'll beat me up. I'm not strong, and I can't run too fast anymore. More than 10,000 Yankee troops poured onto the island, but by then the Baynard family had fled. Union troops moved into their plantation house without a struggle, and they remained there, using the property as a headquarters through the end of the war. Thinking that the Baynards might have hidden some of their treasure in the family mausoleum to recover later, looters broke into their tomb at Zion. No valuables were discovered. That is, unless you count the corpse of William Baynard. They emptied the sepulcher, including removing Baynard's body. His remains have never been recovered. Sometime between August and December 1867, the manor went up in flames. Some think it was torched by a band of ex-Confederate raiders. Regardless, by the time Hilton Head Island was resettled after the Civil War, there was nothing left standing on the Baynard property, and there was no reason for the family to return. They did go to court to regain legal title to the land about 15 years later, but they never moved back onto the island. Today, little more than a few foundations of the mansion remain. Little more than a few foundations of the mansion remain. There are ruins of a few outbuildings, probably the quarters for the slaves who acted as servants in the main house, part of the chimney from the overseer's lodgings, and a small structure that most likely acted as reinforcement for Union tents. There's not much more to see, but that hasn't stopped the ghost of William Baynard from returning home. I had to get another drink. I always get that tickle like I'm going to cough when I'm reading. This is going to be the last story for tonight. How long? It's been an hour and a half almost. Today, okay, I already read that. Today, there are ruins of a few outbuildings, probably the quarters for the slaves who acted as servants in the main house, part of the chimney from the overseer's lodgings, and a small structure that most likely acted as reinforcement for Union tents. There's not much more to see, but that hasn't stopped the ghost of William Baynard from returning home. In 1956, developer Charles Frazier opened Sea Pines Resort, a master planned enclave designed as a family holiday destination. Hilton Head Island has grown in leaps and bounds ever since. It has become subdivided into private residential gated communities called plantations, not to be confused with the Civil War era plantation estates, each offering its own blend of spas, golf facilities, beaches, and oceanfront views. More than 2 million tourists now visit Hilton Head annually, and over the past half century, quite a few have been shocked to witness a most unusual sight: the ghostly funeral cortege of William Baynard. According to the stories, and Lisa D is terrified of anything that even smacks of a little bit scary. She does not do well. According to the stories, on moonlit nights, his ghost can be seen riding in a black draped horse-drawn coach at the front of a funeral procession. His carriage is followed by the phantoms of his servants, dressed in plush red velvet, grieving for their master. Hey, Tammy. Nice to see you, Tammy. I've been missing you. The sad parade travels the old roads from the plantation ruins to Highway 278, heading toward the family mausoleum, which is near the intersection with Matthews Drive. The Zion Chapel itself is gone, but the small cemetery remains. The Baynard Mausoleum, built in 1846, is still there. In fact, it's the oldest intact building and the largest antebellum structure on Hilton Head Island. The cortege stops at each plantation along the route. Baynard's ghost steps out of his coach, walks slowly to the gate, pauses briefly, and then returns to the carriage. It's said the spirit is searching for his body so he can return it to the family crypt. If you see the ethereal parade go by, please give way. The restless specter of William Baynard, I would be giving way, has been disturbed more than often for one lifetime and the next. Yeah, that's all we'll do for tonight. About an hour and a half. That's good. Right, guys? And I thought they would do more on that, but no. The next one is a place Dave and I have been, Harper's Ferry in West Virginia. I don't know if any of you guys have been there. Such a cool place. I loved it. I recorded a young man that was traveling the Appalachian Trail all by himself. I took a little recording of him. I think it's on my Facebook. Okay, Billy Boy, thank you. Thanks for listening, Nicole. Thank you, guys. See you later at Carolyn's. Yeah, I would be happy to see you. Bye, guys. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.